have the Celtics in between category. I want to save the Bucks for after we cover a lot of these winners because I know that their offseason can go either way. I want to switch gears to the team that lost Kevin Durant, and that's the Golden State Warriors. Because I know we've kind of been all on Sean Marks, and his final act was doing right by D'Angelo Russell, got him his money, and sent him to a team where he could win. So essentially, the Warriors, they're getting back Klay Thompson. That's no secret. He could probably return to the court as early as February. I would say probably mid to late February, given the timeline after his ACL surgery was done just today. But they bring in Russell to be in the backcourt with Steph Curry. That's going to be very entertaining to watch. The only question is what happens when Klay comes back? Do they slide him down to the 3? And then are the Warriors championship contenders with that group? Because they lost Iguodala as well. They had to basically renounce him. They trade him to the Grizzlies. He's most likely going to get bought out and go to the Lakers. But they lose Iggy, they lose Durant, and they replace him with D'Angelo Russell. So shouts to Sean Marks for the 14th time this episode. And what do you make of the Russell move, where a lot of people were saying Lakers, Karl Anthony Towns desperately wanted him to go to Minnesota, but he ends up going to Golden State and is now in the same backcourt as Steph Curry.
Well, I mean, I think the first thing is that I just think you couldn't ask for a better team to be a fan of than the Golden State Warriors. I just mean, it's unbelievable what they're willing to do. I mean, they're going to spend a boatload of cash because not only do they get D'Lo, they get Looney back, they're getting Willie Cauley-Stein. They're making these moves on the edges that are going to cost them millions upon millions of dollars in luxury tax payments. For the Russell part, the thing that's really interesting is that the buzz around the league has actually been that the Warriors don't actually want Russell. They just want him as an asset play. And as soon as Thompson comes back, they can trade him, I think it's after December 15th. So once Thompson comes back, they might ship him to another team and then kind of go from there. So that's kind of a fascinating subplot here too, is will Russell stay a Warrior or will they use him there? For now, the fit's okay. It's going to be a terrible defensive team in the backcourt with those two. They're just too small. They're going to have a lot of trouble defending. I think that's going to be tough. The kind of the subplot, though, I think that's more interesting is going to be, can Russell keep his shooting percentages up where they were last year? So he shot career highs really in every area of the floor for the most part. He was a really, really good shooter. He had that floater that I'm sure you're very familiar with. And he was just shooting lights out really everywhere on the floor. He shot a career high from 3. I mean, he was just a really good shooter all around the court, but a lot of people were questioning whether it's sustainable because he doesn't really get to the line, and he just takes a lot of mid-range shots. So I think, Jason, that's going to be the thing to me that we're going to have to watch with him on the Warriors is, will he be able to keep making shots the way that he did last year? It's the guy who's a career 42% shooter from the floor. Can he kind of change his shot diet a little bit in Golden State and get some better looks? Can he get to the line a little bit more? If not, what does that mean for the Warriors? And what does it mean for his development?
Well, I think it's a good move, and that's a great point you bring up because I didn't think of that. I guess it's basically Bob Myers' way of not losing Kevin Durant for nothing.
Exactly.
Yeah, so he could end up moving somewhere like Minnesota. It's funny because the Nets are also including Travion Graham and Shabazz Napier in the deal, and they wound up getting flipped to the Timberwolves for cash considerations. And, Russell may have wanted to go there and play with Cat, so that's pretty interesting. But the Warriors are doing everything they can to kind of salvage their dynasty because you still have Draymond Green and Steph. You have Klay when he comes back from the ACL and Russell. But they still need depth. I mean, there were rumors before the show that they agreed to a deal with Willie Cauley-Stein, essentially locking down that starting center spot there. So I think that's a good move for them. But then I guess the question for Golden State and really for the NBA is, where is there room on an NBA roster for DeMarcus Cousins? Because I don't think there's a market for him right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be pretty interesting to see where he ends up. I had thought he might end up on the Knicks. It doesn't seem like that's going to happen. He might end up somewhere like the Clippers, perhaps. I don't know. I mean, Clippers don't really need that guy, so it's going to be kind of interesting to see where the music stops here and where he kind of ends up, because there's not that many teams that really need a center, and yet I do find myself thinking, man, there might be a team out there that's going to get a bargain on Cousins, because now he's going to be coming in extra motivated, and presumably he'll be healthy by the time the season starts after dealing with a bunch of lower body injuries. So I actually feel like, Jason, I mean, there's a team out there that might get a bargain. You do start to wonder, though. I mean, this would be ridiculous, but could he decide to chase a ring with the Lakers or a team like that, particularly if the Lakers end up with Kawhi? I mean, would he take another one of these kind of like minimum low-level deals just to kind of chase a ring, you think?
We've seen that experiment already with Anthony Davis in New Orleans. So, I mean, I did see a rumored tweet, though, that if the Lakers miss out on Kawhi, they could bring in Cousins and try and pair him with Davis again. But I don't think it works. I mean, Cousins, I think, showed that he could still be a top-notch NBA player, but for long spurts, that remains to be seen. I thought he had 2 good games in the finals, but it wasn't enough. You know, we said in our finals preview podcast that Cousins was playing for his NBA future, and he didn't show enough in the finals, in my opinion, to warrant a long-term deal elsewhere. I mean, we're going to get to a lot of these other teams that, you know, what they've done in free agency, but the big picture so far is, you know, once Kawhi makes his decision, that completely dries up the market, because the only 2 teams left with moderate to a large amount of cap space are the 2 Los Angeles teams. You know, I predicted that Cousins would go to the Clippers if they struck out on everybody. So that, I think, is still in play. But at what cost? He's not getting a max deal anywhere.
It's a great point. I mean, and so it'll be interesting to see there. I think the takeaway here, though, is just, man, look at the Warriors. It's just their ability to keep going out there, spending, trying to make their team better. I just think it's so impressive. I have to give them a ton of credit. We crush some of these teams for being cheapskates. I mean, as a Bulls fan, I see this every day with the way that Reinsdorf and the Gar-Pax regime just refuses to spend money, even when they had a contender. We just saw it with the Bucks that, quite frankly, and maybe this is a good place to go next. I mean, the Bucks decided not to keep Brogdon, and part of that was that they didn't really want to pay him. So they kind of brought back the rest of their core, but it seems like they sort of decided that the price tag for Brogdon was a little too high. He ends up going to the Pacers, which I actually like the move for the Pacers, Jason. I mean, I think the Pacers made a couple really smart moves here. Getting Brogdon was great. Obviously, they ended up with T.J. Warren on draft night, and I thought that was a nice little move by them, because I think Brogdon has potential to be really quite good in this league, and I think he's a really good fit for the Pacers team and what they needed, particularly while Oladipo's out, but he's one of those guys who can fit in. However, the move to me, maybe the best contract of the offseason outside of the max guys, Jeremy Lamb. I thought that was one of the absolute steals of free agency. If you said I could have Bojan Bogdanovic or Jeremy Lamb, I'd be hard pressed. I probably would actually take Lamb because he's a better defender by a good margin. They got him for what, half the price, Jason, of what they ended up. The Jazz ended up paying Bogdanovic. They get him for 3 years, $31 million. I mean, I thought that was one heck of a deal for a guy who's really gotten better every year in the league, has really improved his shot, and a good sign of things to come is the fact that he shot almost 90% from the line last year on a team that really didn't have much spacing. I think that Jeremy Lamb is a steal for them, really good at a lot of different things. So I love what the Pacers did. I felt like they got some really good two-way talent and really good complementary players for Oladipo. We'll have to see what happens with the Sabonis and Turner experiment, but you know, T.J. Warren can play a little four, so I really love the Pacers, what they did. I'm not sure how much I love the Bucks taking a step back, but what did you think of those two teams, the sign and trade with Brogdon and what the Pacers and Bucks did between them?
Well, Brogdon got paid. That's your man. You know, we included him in our free agent preview, and he was off the board the first day. So it'll end up being a sign and trade. But I do like Indiana's offseason. my big concern is they have a ton of bigs and they need a point guard. Because where are the minutes going? You have Oladipo coming back healthy. Brogdon's got to get minutes in the backcourt now. And you have Jeremy Lamb and TJ Warren on the wings. They need another point guard. Darren Collison looking like he's going to retire from the league at just 31 years old. There are some veteran point guards out there still, but what are you going to do? Bring in a Rajon Rondo to play there? No, that is going to destroy the chemistry. So like what Indiana's doing with an asterisk, if they don't like any of these point guards that are still left on the market when the dust settles, then maybe they'll make a deal to flip a big for a point guard, and then you could look at the Pacers as a contender in the East. Because right now, I have them as a playoff team, but how good can they really go without a point guard in a guard-driven league is my question.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's really interesting with this team is we have no idea when Oladipo's coming back. And that's pretty interesting because, I mean, they have Aaron Holiday, who they drafted last year. Now they have Brogdon. So those guys are more than likely going to get they're going to soak up a lot of those point guard minutes. I think who the two guard is at this point, I mean, I guess you could play Lamb there, I suppose. I mean, I'm not sure he's a guy you want to have, playing 35 minutes. So I think they do need definitely another guard to help fill in on the team. And I think Lamb might honestly be a little bit better suited for the three. He's actually a pretty good rebounder for his size and his position. So it's interesting. But, I mean, the big thing to me, Jason, is just that, I mean, when you look at this team, Oladipo, the latest news is that he might not come back until 2020, until January. I mean, that's going to make it tough for this Pacer team. They're going to really have to show something while he's out, or they could end up digging themselves in the hole. So what about the other side of this, though, Jason? What about the Bucks, who they bring back Brook Lopez. They get his brother Robin. So it's a Lopez brother reunion.
The twins!
And obviously they bring back Chris Middleton on a deal that feels like, I'm not going to lie, it feels like a little bit of an overpay. I mean, I think they had to do it. But I'm not sure Chris Middleton is the guy you want to max out. I'm just going to be honest. I'm not sure that move's going to look great in a couple of years. What did you think of those moves?
I think they're trying to bring the band back together with a caveat. I thought it was a well-earned deal for Brook, $13 million a year. He got that money in Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. So he's basically just a $13 to $15 million a year player throughout his career. And for a traditional center whose position's kind of being phased out, I'm proud of Brook. Everyone knows he's my favorite player in the league. So I'm happy with the Lopez deal. I do agree that Middleton could be a bit much, but he would have gotten a ton of money elsewhere. And that's Giannis's right-hand man. And if you look at the landscape, with all these superstars changing teams, the next one up for free agency in 2 years is Giannis. So I think John Horst is doing everything he can to keep Giannis happy and get him to sign that insane Supermax extension to be a Buck for life. And then they kept his guys. They kept Bledsoe. They kept Lopez. They kept Middleton. And I thought 3 for $29 for George Hill is a disastrous overpay. But he does have playoff experience, so I think that he'll be in that backup role behind Bledsoe, manning that second unit. Robin Lopez, okay, I guess he'll replace, Mirotic, who went to Europe. He's not even staying in the NBA. And I don't know if Ersan Ilyasova will be back. So they bring in Robin to back up his brother Brook. The one signing I do like for Milwaukee, and I think that it kind of softens the blow of losing Brogdon, is Wes Matthews. Because he shows that he is an example of a player that can come back from that Achilles injury. I mean, I think he was on a meteoric rise, could have been a potential all-star before that injury when he was in Portland, but goes to Dallas, is okay. Then he gets flipped to the Knicks. They buy him out. He goes to the Pacers, plays in the playoffs. But I think Milwaukee is getting a healthy Wes Matthews, and that makes losing Brogdon a little bit easier, even though Brogdon's a younger player with a much higher upside. So, I mean, the Bucks are right there. I think they're kind of hoping Kawhi goes west because then they're toe-to-toe with Philly as the top two teams in the Eastern Conference. But the Bucks brought their important guys back. Middleton, Lopez, Bledsoe, even though he fizzled out in the playoffs, Hill in a more complimentary role. And they filled some needs with Lopez and Matthews. So I'm okay with Milwaukee's offseason because they have possibly the best player in the league in Giannis. So the Bucks are going to be right there.
So, I mean, here's the thing for me. Wes Matthews, very good three-point shooter. Very solid, good spot-up guy. Who the heck is starting at the 2 for the Bucks next year. And